So one thing I just want to share is I completed my entire journey from Rouse IAS. I did not go anywhere else. Whatever current affairs, material to study, class notes, test series, everything I have done at Rouse IAS, and everything, all of my records you will get here as well. And I started my journey here, I ended it here itself, thankfully, and now I'm here again, completing the circle, again sitting with Mati sir. One of the very good things here was that everything was completed on time, unlike some other coaching centers which I've heard of. So this is the kind of support we got from the teachers here. I think I was really surprised that in prelims examination, 30 to 35%, and even in mains, the questions came directly from what we were taught in QIP, and also a lot from our class notes, right? So my only thing is that you need not go anywhere else apart from whatever is being provided to you by Rouse IAS. My entire preparation I've done from here, 1.5 years of preparation, and that is more than enough to clear the exam. If you want to gain a lot of knowledge, then you can do anything you want. But if you want to clear the exam, whatever is being taught to you here, whatever material is being provided to you here, that is much more than enough.
Today we have amidst us a wonderful guest, one of our students, Subhankar, who has managed to score 11th rank in the recent Civil Services Examination. Can we hear it from you?
Thank you.
He is an electrical engineer, I believe, from IAS in Dhanbad. Yeah, and he has cleared the exam in the very first attempt. Yeah, and icing on the cake is that it was the very first attempt of his during COVID times, and he is from the very first online batch that we started in Rouse. And now he is here to share his experiences with us, his journey, and he's open to all your questions. Yeah, and you can get all your apprehensions sorted out. Yeah, from the top of himself. Yeah, ready?
Yeah, see, nothing to speak. He will explain to us exactly. He's the right person, and right now I think he will tell us how to clear this exam in first attempt. So generally people have a lot of doubts, lot of myths. Clearing this exam is very tough, etc. But he will tell us exactly what is the way to do it in a simplified manner. And he's the right person, I think, without any delay. So I'll give mic to him. He will share his journey. And if you have queries also, once he will discuss about prelims and mains and personality test, you are free to ask him few questions also. Okay, Subhankar?
Yes, thank you, sir. And this was the first online batch. Everything was first for me as well. And Sir Mati sir was our first teacher in that batch. So he held the orientation classes as well. And my original plan was that in 2020 was when I was getting graduated. So I'll work 1 year in the corporate sector and then I'll give the examination. But as we had our COVID lockdown, and after that I decided I'll get a lot of time to study because it was all work from home, and the other coaching centers, they had stopped their classes altogether. So Rouse had started their online batches, and I saw the ad in the paper and I just joined. And I started my journey here. I ended it here itself, thankfully. And now I'm here again, completing the circle, again sitting with Mati sir. So it was a very wonderful experience. And as they said, it was my first attempt. I didn't have a lot of time as well. So our batches started in June 2020 and prelims was supposed to happen in June 2021. And I was a working aspirant, at the time. So the first 6 months of my preparation, 6 to 8 hours I would spend at my workplace, and then 4 hours of classes here. And I would have very little energy left to study anything after this entire hectic schedule. So I left my job in February 2021 because the prelims was supposed to be in June. But then unfortunately the second COVID wave happened and the exam got postponed. So in that time I then, completed my a large portion of my main syllabus, which I was already taught at Rouse. One of the very good things here was that everything was completed on time, unlike some other coaching centers which I've heard of. Here everything was not to schedule. Sometimes it was extended as well, but it was always ensured that the syllabus was covered, at least how much ever the teachers wanted to teach us. I also remember Mati sir himself, in our batch he took I think 57 or 58 classes. And he had extended the schedule by 6 or 7 classes because he also wanted to cover post-independent India. So this is the kind of support we got from the teachers here. So one thing I just want to share is I completed my entire journey from Rouse IAS. I did not go anywhere else. Whatever current affairs, material to study, class notes, test series, everything I've done at Rouse IAS, and everything, all of my records you will get here as well, right? So basically this was my journey. First 6 months with job, very little time for self-study. After that, I left my job. I studied for the examination, and then the QIP batches, they help for the more exam orientation during those point of 1 or 2 months just before the examination. So QIP helps you there. So here you first, the concept which I understand now, which I find really good is here first they'll teach you the foundation of every subject, especially the important ones. They'll teach you really well. And then you'll have your time to self-study, test it out. And then you'll have QIP classes just before prelims, where teachers who are focusing more on the Focus magazine, Compass magazine, who are more adept with the current affairs and more thorough with them, they will teach you in the last 1.5 months what is more important for the exam at that point of time. And I don't think, like, I was really surprised that in prelims examination, 30 to 35%, and even in mains, the questions came directly from what we were taught in QIP, and also a lot from our class notes, right? So my only thing is that you need not go anywhere else apart from whatever is being provided to you by Rouse IAS. My entire preparation I've done from here, 1.5 years of preparation, and that is more than enough to clear the exam. If you want to gain a lot of knowledge, then you can do anything you want. But if you want to clear the exam, whatever is being taught to you here, whatever material is being provided to you here, that is much more than enough than what is required for the exam, to be very honest, because there is a limitation to everything that you can do. And it is more important to just do what is more important a more number of times, rather than running after a lot of material, a lot of online videos, these kind of things. So see, mostly my preparation revolved around Rouse IAS. I would like to take your doubts, because that would make it more, it would be more oriented towards what you actually want to know from me, rather than me telling or just going about myself. So I would like to take up doubts more than anything else, right? Open for doubts, like anybody, yeah.
So what is your optional?
Mathematics.
Mathematics.
Right.
So you have done your mathematics optional during the preparation,
Right.
or you have done it before?
No, during the preparation. So that is why I didn't have a lot of time, because I also had to study maths. Maths is a very long optional. So I was always short for time in this examination. And in hindsight, I think that was the best thing that happened to me. Because I was short for time, I just studied what was required for the exam, right? I did not have the time and the license to go around a lot of material, lot of videos, lot of coachings, right? So whatever was provided, like there were times when whatever Rouse IAS was giving me was very, it was very burdening for me, because you had tests after classes, right? You had to publish your answer keys, all of those things. So because I had very little time, I just did what was given to me here. So I had to manage my optional as well. So as you said, maths, it was a very long optional. So that is why now I think that was the best thing that happened to me, right?
Subhankar, if I may
Right.
let me rephrase this question.
Right.
I get this question from most of the students. What would be the right time to prepare for the optionals?
I think,
Let's reorient that question.
yeah, I think this is a very important question. See, first thing you need to realize is that you cannot clear your mains without scoring well in option papers. That is the first thing you have to get into your mind, right? Secondly, I think it is preferable that you decide on your optional before you start your GS, etc. coaching, because optional is going to play a very important role in your exam. So it is very important that you are very clear on your optional, what it is and why you have chosen it, whatever your reasons are. And the right time to prepare for optional is along with your GS classes, right? Because you have to finish your optional as fast as possible, and then you have to revise it as fast as possible. So preferably before going to prelims exam, if you have revised it optional once, what that will do is, because just before prelims, 2.5 months, you won't study anything related to mains. So you will be out of touch with your optional. But just after prelims, then you'll have to pick it up. So if you're going to revise it for the first time, or if you're going to study some topics for the first time, that is not at all advisable. That is the time to be revising. So if you have done your revision once, then just after prelims, your revision will be twice or 3 times. And that is when you'll actually have, you'll start getting your command over your optional subject. You will then give your test series, and then you'll analyze what you have to do better. So the ideal time to start your optional, whatever classes or preparation you have to do, is right when you have started your GS classes. Right? That is the best time, because finish it as soon as possible and revise it as soon as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Did you make Did you make notes from newspaper, your own notes?
See, I'll tell you what I did. I did make notes from newspapers, but it was not that I jotted down everything that I felt was important. What I used to do was, initially first 2 months, newspaper reading was difficult for me. So I used to watch DNS at night, one day before DNS. So I used to see what topics they are selecting, why they are selecting, how they are relating it with the syllabus. These kind of things I used to see. And within 1.5 months, when I got comfortable with identifying the topics and reading the newspaper, I stopped watching DNS. And after that, I would only make notes out of newspapers which I felt would not be covered in the Focus magazine, right? For example, if there is an anecdote in some editorial which I felt could be very important for the exam. And what I did was I created WhatsApp groups in which I added my brother and I removed him. So I was the only person in that group. So I had a group for essay, ethics, and GS. And there, for example, I would find a good anecdote which I could use in the essay. I would click the photo, and in that group, like in that photo, I would write where I could use it. Whether it in a poverty-related essay or in an agriculture-related essay. For example, C. Raja Mohan sir writes a lot in the Indian Express. I used to read the Indian Express. So sometimes he used to write very catchy statements with some very important neighbors or allies of India, you know. So I used to write those statements down in the WhatsApp group that I could use this in IR, and they will not cover it in Focus, because Focus is a different type of approach where they do cover means oriented things as well, but they are explaining the concept rather than telling you these catchy type of statements which you can use as introduction as our conclusion. So I would only take those parts which I was sure that would not be covered in the Focus magazine, right? And otherwise, for example, see if COP26 was there last year, so whatever articles came from there, I knew the important aspect would be covered well in Focus. So I don't have to make notes out of that. I just read, because any article that will come in the newspaper, it will come for a long period of time. Right, for example, even when I was preparing ADL, the anti-defection law was very important. Right now, it is also very important. You will have articles coming on it for 15, 16 days. So you don't start making notes out of that. You just keep reading it, you form an opinion, and that will stay with you forever. And then when you revise the Focus magazine, there they will tell you what are the constitutional provisions and what are the issues, what committee has suggested what. They will do a holistic analysis. I would just pick out stuff which I would feel that, okay, if an ADL question comes in the exam, and this is a very good statement or very good solution, which might not be covered in Focus, that only I would pick up. So I would not make very holistic notes out of newspaper, because it's not advisable. You're going to read the newspaper for, I think, what, 1.5 years. If you start making notes, you'll have this much notes of the newspaper, right? So I didn't follow that. I used to just pick out stuff which I used to think was very catchy or very relevant for the exam, which might not be covered in the Focus magazine, right?
Yeah, anybody? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So did you pass the mic to him? Yeah.
So did you make the class notes as a basic source, or
Yes.
did you rely on standard sources?
No, see, class notes, there's a reason why you are doing the classes, right? So for example, if I'm not revising my modern history notes and then I'm reading Spectrum, the difference is the same thing. You will understand yourself as well, but it will take you 3-4 readings. When you're taught the same thing by Mati sir in class, you're jotting down these points and whatever class notes you're making, that works as a self-revision. Right? You're listening and then you're writing. And then when you're reading the same topic again in Spectrum, your understanding is very good. And you're going to understand that in one go at least, you know, at the max or probably 2, not more than that. So that is why you make your class notes. And my class notes were my base. After that, I studied the basic books, whatever was recommended. So sir recommended Spectrum. I stuck to it. For economy, I didn't find any good book. At that point, I thought class notes were more than enough. And if you look at the questions that have been asked, they have come directly from class notes, whatever is being taught. So you keep that as your base, because they will cover, for example, in economy, current affairs is also very important. So now in our batches, sir did not teach SDF because it was not there by standing deposit facility. But now he will teach, because RBI has introduced it. And now he'll teach why they didn't put reverse repo as the base, why they put SDF, what is the reason. So they'll teach you everything. So your current will also get revised, your static is always there. And then you complement it with your newspaper, Focus. And see, you will get a very holistic picture of almost every topic that is being taught. So your class notes has to remain your base, right? Because you will make, for any topic, you will make at least one notebook of notes. And that you have to revise multiple times along with the basic books, at max 1 for every subject. For polity, if you're studying Lakshmikant and class notes, more than enough. Don't have to study anything else. For modern history, your class notes and Spectrum, more than enough. ठीक है, बहुत ज़्यादा पढ़ेंगे भी तो that is a load. You see, if you study, I'll tell you what happens. Every book is an opinion by the author, right? So if you study a lot of opinions, you'll get confused yourself. So it's better to stick to what is being taught to you and what you're reading in one basic material, try to converge both of them, and then you'll make your perfect notes out of that after 3-4 revisions. So stick to your basic notes and please make them. I've seen a lot of people, they don't make notes in classes, they just listen as if it is a story that is going on, and then they'll run after compilations. Whatever note you're making is very important, because that is what you'll remember, that is what you'll reproduce in the exam, right? Because in the mains exam, it is a blank paper in front of you. In prelims, you have the answer in front of you. So even if you don't remember exactly, you can recall, you can do the question. In mains, that will not happen. So it is very important to make your own notes. One aspect, and again, I want to take up here is people refer to topper notes. I would suggest don't do that. And the reason is very simple. For example, if I'm making notes on economy, right? There are things which are very obvious to me. I will not write it in my notes. Notes are for revision. That I'll see before the exam, things that I forget, right? And you might not know those things, and you might just study my notes, go into the exam and think, यार ये तो उसने लिखा ही नहीं था, and ये पता नहीं question कहाँ से आ गया, वो ऐसे ही topper बन गया था. That does not happen. He has some things in, for example, I have some certain data on water stress in my mind. I'm not going to write down in my notes because that comes naturally to me. I'll write down stuff that I'll forget, right? So make your own notes. You can take inspiration from topper notes, what they are writing, how they are writing, but just don't blindly follow them. That is not at all advisable. I just wanted to add to it, right? Yeah.
Good. And let me add my points as well. If this exam is just about reading books, everybody will clear this exam.
Right.
Many times, it's the unimportant things we talk in the class, or funny stories that share in the class, will trigger a certain kind of a memory that will help you crack a question or two in the exam.
Sorry, I just want to, like just said, right? Paying attention in class is very important. So when Mati sir was teaching us, there was this INA trials wala part when you guys will study. So there in INA trials, the Britishers, they brought 3 prisoners from the INA, the Indian National Army. And sir told us that they deliberately chose one Sikh, one Muslim and one Hindu, prisoner from the army that they caught to have a public trial, to break that kind of communal tension that was already prevailing in India and try to antagonize it, right? In 2021 prelims, which I gave, there was this one question, Gurbakh Singh Dillon and one other Muslim name and Hindi name, and are related to. And then there are 4 options. And there was one option where it was mentioned INA trials prisoners. It immediately struck my mind that Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, INA is there. I could recall something. You don't remember these kind of facts exactly, right? But if you know the reason behind this, which is explained to you in classes, that the analysis part of it, that why they picked only these 3 people, what was the reason for that? And because I knew the concept of it, I didn't remember the names, but I understood the concept, I saw the option, I take the answer. So just as Sir said, that not everything comes from books. It is from the analysis that you're being taught in the class. So pay attention in the class. And then, as you said, these things, if they are in your notes, it is going to help you massively in the exam as well, right? Yes.
Do you used to brainstorm the process of answer mains writing, like preparing introduction, then body, and then conclusion, and then after preparing such notes, what will be the interconnections between the...
Right. Now, this is a very good question. I would love to answer this. And see, initially when we are reading, right, we don't do these things because we don't understand the importance of this unless and until we start answer writing. So when we are preparing for prelims, we are just consuming content because we have to remember content which we can identify in the paper, right? When you are studying for mains, you only have content at that point. You don't have that holistic understanding how to interlink and all of these things. So even I didn't have that initially. So when I started answer writing, that is when I realized that I could not form an introduction. I could not form a conclusion. The first 10 marker I wrote it more than 20 minutes. An exam, you have 7 minutes, right? So that is the difference I analyzed immediately. And what will happen is when you start answer writing, after that, when you start studying your content, let's say you're studying governor chapter, right? Then you'll start identifying, oh, this I can use as introduction. This I can use as conclusion. For example, in tribunals chapter, my conclusion was always said. Whenever they would ask something on tribunal, my conclusion was said that L. Chandra Kumar judgment, 1997, recommended National Tribunal Commission to be headed by a Supreme Court judge. Set conclusion, whatever they ask. Right, because something or the other, it will be related to tribunal reforms, right? So, and the introduction was also said because I started reading my content that way. And this will happen once you start answer writing. So even in answer writing, I would say, it is not that today you decide I will start writing answer and you start writing anything you want. first you need to have certain amount of content and revision. In certain subjects like modern history, polity, geography, here you can do your answer writing when you get like 1 or 2 revisions, right? Because here they're not multi-dimensional answers. These are very standard topics. These are very static topics. So from here, you can start writing answers and then you will develop the habit of it. And then after 7-8 months, your course would be completing topics like society, governance, IR, where you need that multi-dimensional aspect. Then you start writing answers for those topics. And just because you have done answer writing for static topics beforehand, you won't face a lot of difficulty then. And after this, you'll start analyzing and reading your content in that manner where you'll start understanding this data I can use as intro, this I can use as conclusion. For example, in women empowerment questions, my data would be one WF report. I'm forgetting the name right now. So that is how you start, thinking about how, like if you're reading something, how you will be using it in the exam, right? If you're reading, for example, in prelims, we'll read a lot of reports, we'll remember them. But how will you use Human Development Index in an answer? Where will you use it? In poverty related answers, right? In, for example, human development related answers, and where you will use it, what are their parameters, how you will use it. For example, they're not asking you directly about Human Development Index. Let's say they just say that India is growing but not developing, right? So what are the aspects that you will write? When you have remembered in prelims the factors for Human Development Index, what are the things they're using? Make that as your points in the answers, right? It is as simple as that. It's just that you will start studying these things in that manner, that how you are going to use it in answers. You're not just going to consume content like prelims. So that will start happening after you do a bit of answer writing, and that understanding you will develop afterwards. So first try to, cover your course syllabus, revise, write a few answers, and then when you're going to revise again, you're going to revise it in such a manner that this can be used here, this can be used there, I can use this topic here, or like this, I can interconnect like this. These things will start happening after that, right? Next.
Yeah.
Oh.
I would like to ask, sir, how was it like in the journey? How was the schedule, sir, of a day, week? How you used to plan to study? Like sometimes unplanned studies create anxiety in us.
Right. See, I never used to have a daily plan, but I used to have weekly targets. That at the end of the week, I have to finish this, I have to revise this. These things used to be in my mind. So I used to study daily accordingly. For some day, for example, I want to study 4 hours, I studied 4 hours. The other day I want to study 8 hours, I studied 8 hours. But at the end of the week, these things should be completed. That used to be my goal. And initially when I was working as well, so I didn't have a lot of time. So my weekends used to be very heavy. Weekend I used to put in a lot of hours. After I stopped, after I left my job, I think 9 to 10 hours is what I used to study. And I used to study, I used to divide my day in 2 halves. So first half I would study maths, that was my optional, 4 to 5 hours. Second half I used to study GS. And then I had targets that a modern history, let's say before 1857, should be revised by the end of the day, by the end of the week. So if that I have to do by the end of the week, then how much I have to study on a particular day, or what type of topic I would study. For example, before 1857, you have the socio-religious reform movement. So I'll study that topic on one day. One day I'll study some other topic. But by the end of the week, the entire before 1857 slot should be revised. That way I used to study. So now again, studying is very personal thing. It comes individually. Everybody uses it in a different way. So if you like having daily targets that I want to complete this much by this day, that you can have. But my only thing is that at least you should have a directed way of studying. It should not be haphazard. That one day I'm feeling like studying modern history, so I'll study it. The other day I'm feeling like studying economy, I'll just study a few chapters on banking. That is not going to help you in the examination, because you need to have a directed way of studying, an orderly way of thinking. And that will come when you revise and study in an orderly way. So that is very important. So keep targets. If you want to keep daily, monthly, weekly, hourly, whatever you want to do, just do it in a very directed way. That is what I want to suggest. Yeah.
He's just telling what has worked for him. You can definitely customize that
Exactly.
to your situation.
Yeah. Ask. This is good.
Was it difficult for you to create new perspectives or opinion? Because as far as I have heard, not everything is black or white. So you have to look at the bigger background. So how did you?
Yeah, I think that is where editorials help, right? So when you're studying the editorials, one thing again I want to mention is it is very important to know who is writing the editorial, right? So when you're studying an editorial on any topic, first you identify who that person is. So you'll get a perspective of what he's going to write. whether he's going to write more pros about the topic, more cons about the topic, right? That first thing you'll need to realize. Then when you study that editorial, you need to pick out, okay, on this topic, this opinion is relevant. You might not fully agree with it, but it is relevant. Because in the exam, in the mains exam, it is not like an interview where you will be cross-questioned, right? You just have to put the opinions there. So when on dicey topics like ADL or some other, very sensitive topics, when you're studying these things, you just have to know, at least for certain topics, for example, if there is the increase of marriageable age of women, or currently that topic on, marital rape, right? So what the government's point of view is, you need to be clear with that. And that will happen when you read newspapers, because there in the editorials, they'll tell you what the government lawyer said, why they are defending it, why they are not defending it. And then the other aspect, the NGOs and the other critics, why they are criticizing it. You may not agree with something or the other, but it is very important for you to know what the government stand is, what the opposing stand is, and then how to conclude it in a balanced way, right? You cannot go pro or anti against anything unless it is a topic which requires you to go that way, but you have to be in a very balanced perspective. You might agree or disagree, but you need to know these aspects well, because mains, they are expecting written answers. They are not looking for cross questioning. So if in the mains you are not being seen as inclusive or aware about topics, you will naturally score less. But in interview, you need to be very consistent with your stand, right? Whatever your stand is. For example, if I am against a stand which the government has taken, I will defend it there, my stand, right? And that will happen when you have good amount of knowledge as to why you have a particular stand, because they will dig you deep into it. For example, in my case, they started with reservations, right? Pros, negatives, all of their subcategorization. Then they went to Bihar law and order, right? And I have certain views on these things, and I put it forward, and then they started digging deeper into it. So then they realized ki bhai, whether you've just read 4 pages and that you're just saying there, or you've just read someone's opinion and you're putting it there, or you actually understand what you're saying, right? The reasoning behind it. You can do this in interview, but in mains, you have to have a balanced approach. You need to know the government approach, you need to know the critical approach, and you need to know how to balance these two ideologies and try to present it in that way, right? So just keep track of newspapers. That is why it is very important. Yeah.
Can you pass on it to him?
Sir, how much marks you were expecting in your mathematics optional before?
I was expecting somewhere around 300 plus, 300, 310, but it was 286. But there is no point thinking about it.
Actually, I'm asking this question because if you are expecting, because in mathematics either it is right or wrong.
Right.
So you have calculated it before.
Yeah.
So I'm asking this because how they are calculating it.
Nobody knows. So I think about it. I mean, nobody knows what they're doing in these optionals, how they are scaling down marks. And it is important also because in mathematics, I had 390 correct attempt. So if they give me 390 marks, even if I do very bad in GS, I'm almost at equal level. So they have to do scaling and they should do scaling. I am of that opinion, right? So whatever happens, don't have to think about it. Whatever you can control, control it. If you have such an optional like physics or maths or engineering optional, science optionals, you have to cover them really well, because optional may, if there is scaling, then you are either 260 plus or you are 230 below. The average marks you don't get, which you get in other optionals, right? So we say that UPSC is a great balancer. So it will balance out everything. So if you don't study your optional well and you're focused too much on GS, then you might score good in GS, but your optional will pull you down. And if you study way too much optional and don't study GS enough, you might score very well in optional, but then again you will be down. So you have to have a balance on these things and don't think too much about it. What they will ask, how they will score, what topics in essays might come. Don't ever think about it. Think what is in your control. Try to study them well and replicate them in the exam. Right?
I have a question to you. Why did you choose maths?
I'll tell you, I had a very objective reasoning behind choosing maths, because for me, GS was very new. Everything was new because I come from an engineering background, and after 10th, I haven't studied the social sciences subject. And I was a working aspirant when I started. So I didn't want to study my optional also completely new, right? So I had only 2 options. That was electrical engineering and mathematics. Physics I was weak at, so I decided I won't take. Now, electrical engineering I didn't take because I'm not a good electrical engineer. And even then, 3 years of engineering compiling it in 8 months, I found it to be very difficult. And mathematics is something which keeps coming in the background. So even if you're an electrical engineer, 60 to 65% syllabus is covered in first 2 years of college, and the next 2 years ODE and Laplace transforms, you need to use this for your engineering. So I was well adept with the subject, and I realized this is something I can complete in 8 months, revise in 4 months. So 1 year I can do this thing. So that is why I opted mathematics. It was a very objective decision.
So it wasn't because of the reason that the others have been scoring very good marks in maths.
No, definitely. See, if somebody else is scoring very good in any paper, that is down to his understanding of the subject. That doesn't mean that you will replicate it in the very exact manner, right? So, for example, Kanish Kataria sir had scored 361 in maths, right? Now, to do that, that means he has scored almost 500 correct attempt in maths in those 6 hours of mathematics paper, right? I can't do that. It is not possible for me. It is not humanly possible for anyone. So you can't keep that as a benchmark. You have to keep the benchmark. What is the average? I saw in mathematics average, you can get 260 plus if you are above the, if you are in the top 10, 15 percentile, and I believed I could do that. So that is why I chose math, not because somebody else was scoring high. Otherwise, so I would not have taken this exam itself because I was not confident with anything else, right? So not because other people are doing well, and every optional does well in this exam, especially this year. If you see, all optionals have 280 plus marks. And it is not that only some optionals have done well, which might have been the case earlier, but not now. So choose your optional based on your interest, how much you can study, because it's the key factor for your selection, right?
Yeah, any questions?
Actually, I wanted to ask about essay, as the trend is about philosophical essays nowadays. So, did you brainstorm about this philosophical type of essays or?
I got your question. I'll tell you. See, a lot of people this year were very shocked with the essay paper, and I don't understand why. And I'll tell you the reason behind it. If you look at last 3 years of essay papers, it has been philosophical dominated, right? So it is not a shocker that UPSC has asked all philosophical essays. First things first, I don't know why people made memes and all of those things. It was bound to happen like that, because if you give, let's say, an essay on women issues, almost everybody is going to write the same thing, and there almost everybody is going to get the same marks. And this was happening for a very long time, right? They used to give women essays, agriculture essays, these type of things, and people scored. There was a fixed pattern of attempting those questions. So then they started getting into philosophical essays, and I used to be very happy with philosophy. And I'll tell you why. Not because I write them very well or I was very confident at that. I used to be very happy because if any topic comes from their optional, let's say PSIR or philosophy or any other optional, they will not write an essay. They will write their GS paper. And I knew that optional in GS or in mains also, scoring is relative, right? So I knew they will write GS and they will score less. I will write a very generalist essay and I'll score high. So that used to be my first thing, that I wanted philosophy essays to be there, right? And a lot of people have done that this time also. There is one topic that real is rational, rational is real. मुझे आज भी नहीं समझ आता क्या है उसका मतलब, right? But that came from one optional paper, and I think it is a quote from Hegel. And the optional guys, they don't understand Hegel themselves. So how they will explain to someone else? And they wrote his theories, they didn't get marks. Right? I scored 135 in essay this time, which is a good score for this year, right? And I'll tell you how I approached essays in general. So there were 2 types of essays. I'll discuss both. So in philosophical essays, for example, whatever topic would come, right? You can go into any direction, right? It is a very open-ended thing. Philosophical essays does not mean you'll have to write some philosophy in there, right? You still have to write an essay. Okay, so what I used to do this time, for example, I wrote an essay, philosophy of wantlessness is utopian, while materialism is chimera. Okay, so I didn't understand the word chimera. I saw the Hindi translation, it was Maya. So I thought, hoga kuch materialism, moh Maya type cheez. So I'll see that one later. The first part, I picked it up very quickly. So philosophy of wantlessness is utopian. So in the rough pages, while making structure, I would make, the keywords I would write. So wantlessness, utopian. And then I would, in one column, I would write GS 1, 2, 3, 4. And GS1, modern history, ancient history, art and culture, society, and again in GS2, 3 like that. And I would try to get examples from here, okay? And these examples, for example, I wrote one in ancient India that Lord Buddha and Bhakti saints, all of these people, they talked about Madhyam Marg and Nirvana and, Madhyam Marg and living a simple life, etc. But they also wanted Nirvana, right? So even they had wants. So I got one example from here. I got one example from SNTA that if you don't have any desires, if you don't have any wants, as a human civilization, we would never develop, we would never grow, right? We won't have fire, we won't have circle, wheels, etc. everything. So I got one example from here. So I used to collect examples from my GS content, whatever I have, nothing extra. And that I used to try to fit into the essay in a very coherent manner, right? And then I used to think that where, in which dimensions I can take this essay. For example, if there is an essay on leadership, right? So you can write a lot on leadership, but then you have to write one aspect, how to develop leadership into young kids. So that one aspect I would write, somewhere from my ethics syllabus. So this way I used to, from this GS syllabus itself, I used to break the topic, try to put in relevant examples. And in essay also, like Vikram Grewal sir, he's ranked 51 in some year, and he scored 161 marks in essay. And in his essay, he wrote examples on Marvel, right? Marvel, the series, the film series, right? So you can write examples from these areas of life as well. Don't make it very monotonous. You are writing only Gandhiji and Abdul Kalam. These are good examples, write them. But if in certain topic you can think that you can connect it to a very relevant current figure, very important figure, for example, let's say MS Dhoni or some other stuff. So connect to that. For example, if there used to be an example on discipline, I would always quote Cristiano Ronaldo, right? And if there used to be essays on environment, I used to end it with, there's this song by the Indian Ocean band, Are Ruk Ja Re Bande, right? So I used to just quote 3-4 lines from there, Ki Kudrat Has Padegi, and then English translation side, right? So these things also you can do in essays. You can go wild in essays, especially philosophical essays. So try to approach them like that. You don't have to write philosophy there. If you can understand the topic, and then if you can break it into your GS syllabus and try to make it coherent, that is all you have to do in philosophy essays. I also wrote some content-based essays, and I'll tell you why I wrote. I knew UPSC is not asking anymore, right? But I still wrote essays on women, education, agriculture, poverty, and it helped me a lot in GS too. Why? Because if you are writing an essay on any topic, let's say poverty, you are writing an essay, 1200 words, right? So you will cover everything, government data, what is the expected solution, kya hona chahiye future mein, why it is like this. So you're covering every aspect of it, right? Then certain, like MS Swaminathan might have said something in agriculture or these type of things. In this year's GS2 paper, there was a question on learn while you earn scheme, vocational education. I had written an essay on education where one part was vocational education. So I directly knew the government schemes, data, everything, used it there. Then there was an essay on women empowerment. There was a question on women empowerment that write women empowerment measures without including education for women. I had written an essay on this, so I knew points. I wrote it. Then there was another on primary healthcare. Again, I had written an essay on health structure in India, so I knew very well, so I wrote it. So I knew that these essays would help me GS2, irrespective of the fact that UPSC is not asking them, right? So this way you can approach your essay paper. Essay is very interesting if you start to write it. Just don't, be worried about what is being asked. Start your pen, pick up your pen, start writing essays. You will immediately realize where you are faltering and then improve on them, right?
See, if you see the essay writing, first of all, it is not a subject. They clearly mentioned it is a general studies 1, GS1. You should understand we have a GS, not any philosophy or economy or history or anything in essays. Once you prepare thoroughly for general studies, and automatically got some idea how to start, various dimensions, then automatically you will get interest also, then write better essay writing. And don't keep in mind this type of topics only come. So UPSC can change at any time. But you should prepare such a dimensions. You should not feel it is a new to you. That is what exactly we have to do in our during the course of our preparation. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually, like the economics paper, they asked about the 14th commission.
Right.
So how did you approach such question? Like, we didn't expect that.
Good. I think, yes, good. I think that is a very good question, that in GS paper, you are not going to expect questions that will come only from what you have read. You also need to know how to generate answers, right? So if there was a question on 14th commission, finance commission, everybody knew one point was that from 33%, 32% or they went to 42%, or that data I don't remember exactly. So that was one point everybody knew. Then and I'll tell you how, I think UPSC is very intelligent in asking that question. And the reason is that when we prepared for 15th Finance Commission, right, everybody was studying what they did, nobody was studying the limitations of the 15th Finance Commission. If you would have studied limitation of 15th FC, you would have studied with respect to 14th FC. Then you would have known what they actually did, right? Since I had studied that aspect, I knew 4 or 5 points. So like what they did with local body grants and how they changed it, population ka ratio, how they changed, right? So these points, because I knew the 15th Finance Commission limitations with respect to 14th, so I just wrote those points there. So you prepare also in such manner that, how you can generate answers from whatever you know exactly, right? And even in a lot of people, what they did, they just wrote what the Finance Commission is supposed to do, introduction, conclusion, that way. That's all right, because nobody knew exact points to their answer. And then you have to realize midway in the paper that this question is not going to decide your rank, because everybody is going to write bad answers here, right? But if you are not writing the SLC question well, where they are asking constitutional provisions of SLC, or if you're not writing Bhakti literature well, or if you're not writing GDP question well, then you're going to go down in the rank list. Because that is where marks will be lost. Marks will not be lost in 14th Finance Commission question or in that LED question, because nobody knows answers to that. So everybody is going to write bad answers. Somebody will score 1, somebody will score half, somebody will score 1.5. Nobody is going to score 5 marks there, right? So you have to analyze this within the paper also. If it is tough for you, you have prepared well, it's tough for everybody. So focus on those questions in the end part of the paper where you're already in a rush. And उस समय जो भी दिमाग में है बस उतार के लिख के आ जाना, right?
And off late, I have a question. Off late, students are very crazy about model answers provided by the teachers. Can you please enlighten us to what extent model answers are helpful in the examination?
See, model answers are helpful if you create them yourselves, not if somebody is curating them for you. Right? You have to create your own model answer. I'll give you one example. For example, if there was any water-related issue, my introduction was fixed, Niti Aayog's Composite Water Management Index, and then my this conclusion was fixed, that it was Bhangru model in Gujarat, right? So this is something I curated myself. I read newspapers from whatever data I got to know. And जो बीच का आंसर होता है ना, then it depends on the body, exactly what issue of water they are asking, whether it is agriculture, whether it is urban water management, these type of things. So if you don't create these frameworks yourself, if you are expecting that your teachers will give it to you, then it is not going to help you in the exam, because you're not going to apply your mind as to where you're going to use these frameworks, right? So even if they give it to you, you will never understand, okay, for example, in Bhakti literature, this time they asked how it helped with vernacular languages. So then they did not ask the significance of Bhakti literature. They did not ask why Bhakti literature suddenly came up, right? So I wrote my introduction, the causes of Bhakti literature, just paraphrased it in a way that it looked like a conclusion, introduction, and my conclusion was the significance of the rise of Bhakti literature, and the body was then what they asked, that how it helped grow vernacular languages. So these are something when you will realize when you start answer writing yourself. They have asked only one aspect of Bhakti literature, right? How do you emphasize it in a manner that when he's reading your answer, he understands, okay, he knows comprehensively about this topic. So that will gain you half 1 marks. Don't expect your teachers to spoon feed you. All right, they are here to teach you the concepts. They are here to clear your doubts about the topics. The labor part you will have to do yourself, because even if Mati sir gives you or Reddy sir gives you model answers and you are just mugging it up and in the exam you are not able to utilize it, it's no use, right? And they are not going to write the paper for you. So you have to realize they'll tell you some examples, like this question you should approach like this, you should break the question like this. But how to do these things, that you'll have to develop on your own. So it's better, you understand what they are saying, how they are teaching, and how they are approaching a question when they see one. For example, Mati sir, in the end, he gave us I think a worksheet of 30 odd questions which had UPSC PYQs. He would tell us how he would break the question, what he would write, what he would not write, and what you could write which people are not writing and you already know, right? Reddy sir in his classes, he would discuss a few questions and how you would introduce, how you could use government schemes, how you could use keywords which are directly spoken by government officials, which you will read in papers, right? For example, for Minister of External Affairs, you have the spokesman, Mr. Anindam Bagchi. So how you use their words. These kind of things you have to pick up from the class. But the labor work you have to do on your own. Otherwise, there's no point of writing. That is why UPS is asking 7 papers, right? Otherwise, they could ask 1 paper also and everybody could read. There could be one very good teacher. He could teach everybody and everybody could write well. But they are asking 7 papers, I think, for exactly this reason that you should not be trained into the examination. The understanding they can give you, training you have to do yourself for the exam, right?
See, I think, can I ask one question?
Sure, sir.
See, there are some students are nowadays worried about the CSAT, especially that is the GS2 in prelims. How exactly approach? For example, if somebody is from non-engineering background or non-mathematical background, so how to do in a simple manner? What is your strategy? Being an engineering student, for you may be easy, but what exactly the approach? What they should do?
I think first thing I want to say is there is no shame in preparing for CSAT. I don't know why people, they are just not ready to accept that they will prepare for CSAT also. I don't understand this logic. And nobody is going to come and tell you that, listen, your CSAT is weak. Unless you solve the papers yourself, you won't realize that CSAT you are facing difficulty. And it is a crime to qualify GS1 and not qualify GS2 paper in prelims, according to me. Because you're wasting one opportunity to write mains examination, right? So prepare for CSAT if you think there is a difficulty. What I did, again, my entire planning was based on PYQs. So I took past 5 years CSAT papers, UPSC, I solved them. I realized I could score decent marks here. So I don't need any focused preparation here. But then also I created my own strategy. For example, I realized out of 80 questions, 50 come from the mathematics and logic wala part, right? And you have to do only 27 questions effectively, correct? So what I decided was I'll do maths questions first and I won't fill the bubbles. I will do them again so that I don't make any silly mistakes or those kind of things. So in the actual paper, I did 45 questions like this and then I had half an hour left. In that, I then went to the English comprehension questions. That also, you have to pick very intelligently. In half an hour, if you have to do English comprehension questions, you will pick the short ones that are only 5 lines, 6 lines. And there you will find 10, 12 questions like that. I solved them first, then a few the long ones, which have 2, 3 questions. And in the end, I attempted 61 questions. And I think I comfortably did qualify. So you have to create your own strategy, your own way. Even in maths part, I knew, for example, cube, cuboid, these are topics which I find difficult. So I am not going to attempt questions in this part if they come after a level deeper from what I can easily solve. But if you look at percentage, clocks, right, and work and ratio, these type of questions, UPSC does repeat from here, circular type of question. So practice them well beforehand. So if you're facing difficulty in CSAT, you have to prepare for it. I mean, there's no excuse for it. 2 months are more than enough to prepare for CSAT. Do not lag in CSAT because that is the worst feeling. And this time I've seen people from IITs not able to qualify CSAT because they took it very lightly. And UPSC is increasing the level of CSAT people. So prepare for it. If you think there is a problem, do prepare for it. And here Swami sir teaches really well also. So that is what I did. What I did was on the day of the exam, I just took Swami sir's notes, whatever little I had made from the classes, and I took 2019 and 2020 CSAT paper. And I just revised the CSAT paper. I revised the CSAT paper, UPSC CSAT paper, as to in some questions what concept I used or what was different type of question. And from there, 2-3 questions repeated in the actual 2021 paper. So you form your own strategy for CSAT. Mine was different because I was relatively comfortable. But you will have to find your own way out. And don't skip CSAT because it is a very big pain for a lot of people nowadays, especially last 2 attempts, right?
One more question.
Yes.
How to approach before mains about our language papers, especially mother tongue, like Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, or Hindi, and English.
Right.
What is your approach?
I think first I'll give you my background. So I studied Hindi only till 8th class. 9th and 10th was Sanskrit. And anybody who's taken Sanskrit knows you don't have to write a lot, right? So the last, I have written in Devanagari script was 8th class. And that was way back in 2010 or something, right? So in this year's paper, when I saw what they're asking in Hindi paper, you have to score only 75 marks, right? So how you are going to score? One is an essay. And then there are 2 translations, from English to Hindi, then Hindi to English. I knew from here I will score 75 marks, come what may. And the rest of the paper I will manage somehow, right? So my strategy was, again, 1 week before the language paper, you get a gap because of the optional and GS. So I started studying in my home, 1 essay on Hindi paper, the editorial, which used to come in my home. So I just used to study them to get a feel of the Hindi language itself and how you're going to write it. And in the exam, I've written the worst of Hindi answers that you can, imagine. I have cut my paper 10 times in one answer. I could not write, I have to go to the rough work and try out spellings first before writing, right? Because I didn't know the spellings. But still I qualified because you have to score only 75 marks. So there is one essay that you will write. they will give you 20-25 marks there. And then you will get one translation, you will get another translation. Then there is another question where you have to write a long passage in short form, right? Just write what is being given there. हर एक paragraph का 2-2 line लिख देना. You will get some marks there. You just have to qualify, right? It is not being added in your marks. So just have a strategy to qualify. And if you feel there is a lot of problem, just study thoda sa hi, don't have to fret too much about it. UPSC is not that cruel that they'll fail you in the language paper, right? I have not seen a lot of people failing there unless you leave the. I have this one friend, she's All India rank 91. She's a batchmate from school. So in one of those Paryayvachi questions, she wrote wave in Devanagari. Wave. It was Leher ka they were asking Paryayvachi. So she wrote wave, which is an English word in Devanagari. Do these things. Just don't write English there. Write it in Devanagari. They might see something, they'll give half a marks, whatever. You have to get only 75, right? So just qualify somehow. And they are not going to fail you in. And that is why they don't show your marks. If you are qualified, they don't show your Hindi marks, right? Because they know how you have qualified and what you're going to do, right? So don't worry too much about it. I mean, your focus should be on the papers that will be scored, right?
Yeah. Yes. Ask.
So what are the mistakes you have made in the beginning of the journey? And
many mistakes I made, and one of the biggest blunders that I did was in December and January, December 2020 and January 21, when I was thinking about leaving my job. At that point of time, I don't know why, I just stopped studying my optional paper. Something clicked in my mind. I don't know what I was thinking, what I was doing. I stopped studying my optional paper. And that was the biggest blunder I made, because in February, I left my job. Then there were 3 or 4 months for prelims. So then I had to study only prelims. So my optional was relatively weak. Thankfully for me, the exam got postponed. So in those 2-3 months, and that postponement information also came very early, in Feb end or March start. That will happen in October. So that is when I covered a lot of my maths optional part. And mains, I didn't focus a lot on mains when I was preparing, initial part. When I started answer writing in January, I started writing a few rows answer sheets. I realized my mains preparation is hollow. I know nothing in mains. You know, I know information, I know economy, I know modern history, but I can't write it down. And that is when I realized, and these things happened to me at the right point of time. Then the exam got delayed, and then I made my mains preparation. In this exam, you're going to clear only by mains, right? Mains is the actual exam. Prelims is also a qualifying exam. Your preparation should always be for mains. So this is, now that you guys are starting your batch, this is my honest to God confession to you guys. Prepare for mains. Do not be worried about prelims. Prelims, you will get 2.5, 3 months to prepare only for prelims. Right? When you're doing modern history, polity, economy, obviously you'll solve a few sectional tests, but your overall preparation should be for mains. And PYQ analysis I did very late. That was June, July. You should do it when you're reading. So when sir will teach you, he will tell you, okay, from here, this question was asked, this question was asked. But he cannot explain everything to you. Right? Because he has to complete the syllabus also. It is your duty to go back, see the question, and after reading, analyze what you could have written, whether you could have written that answer from what you already have been taught, these kind of things, right? And if you haven't been taught, then ask him. That is the best part. You know, trouble him. That is why, they are there. Trouble them as much as you can. Yeah. Prepare for means. That is my one honest to God advice. For me, I was lucky. Exam got postponed, right? It's not going to happen again, ever. I don't think so. So starting say prepare for means. That is my one advice. And optional and mains should go hand in hand, and they should be very well consolidated. Prelims, even if you qualify by 0.33 marks, it is more than enough. Scoring 150 marks, nobody is going to give you a medal, right? So just qualify. I think I myself have qualified by only 4.5, 5 marks, not more than that. My marks are not out yet because forest results are not out, but I know that I haven't qualified by a huge margin. But I just qualified enough to be in the list. And then you give mains, and since my mains preparation was strong, then I qualified. So, don't fall into that cycle where you're clearing prelims again and again, but mains is not getting, consolidated well, and you're getting stuck at mains. So prepare for mains at the very onset. It will be difficult at start, but if you do this part initially, at the end of the 8-9 months, you'll be very better placed than a lot of people who are already in the services and giving the exam again, right? You'll be better than them at the exam itself. Right? Yeah.
Sir, what should be the approach for notes making so that we can revise them multiple times? Also, how to merge the current affairs part with the static notes of the class?
So first part is, don't make notes when you have studied for the first time. Right? A lot of people, what they do is they're studying spectrum for the first time and they're starting to underline. You will find everything important because you will think you're studying for the first time. So you will think that, okay, UPSC might ask this line, UPSC might ask this line, and you will underline everything. Do 2-3 revisions first. Then you will realize what you remember, what you don't remember. And what you don't remember, which is relevant for the exam. Mark that part. And then while doing revisions, for example, in precedent chapter, right? So when I would flip through the chapter, I knew the electoral college. So I had not marked it. But when I used to flip through, okay, electoral college, I used to think in my mind, this can vote, this can vote, this cannot vote. Done. Good revision. Ho gaya. Test maybe I could solve questions. Very good. Then there was this Article 143 where the President asked the Supreme Court for advice, right? And in one part it is compulsory, one part it is optional. I always used to get confused there. So I used to mark this part, that this I have to revise every time I'm studying. Again, schedule 2, 3, who are there, who are not there. I always used to forget. So you do this after 2-3 revisions. When you start realizing that what you remember, what you don't remember. The don't remember part, which is relevant for the exam, you only make notes out of that, right? And not when you just started studying. As far as current affairs is concerned, you are studying newspaper every day. Then I used to study the Focus magazine. Udhar se whatever used to be relevant, I used to mark there itself. Because that is also a book. Right? We got the books till April. After that, there were PDFs. So I used to mark there and then itself. Then I used to revise that. And I used to try to link it with whatever is being there in the static part. For example, if there is something on governor in current affairs, so I would link that with whatever I studied in governor myself. And in Lakshmikant, I would go and write somewhere, okay, this is one part which I have to mention in an answer if it comes like that. So that part you can manage, but your static should be strong. Current affairs, you don't have to revise all the time because it is so much in the news. You'll always have some inkling about it, right? In the exam, it will hit you at some point in an example or in a point. It will come naturally to you. If your static part is not strong, whatever current affairs you know, it is of no use, right? So make static notes well, and then add relevant current affairs example. The more number of revisions you do, the better your notes will become and the shorter they would become, right?
So this exam is not only about current affairs, right?
No, definitely not, especially last few years.
There is a perception there.
Right. I think it happened because 2016-17 paper were very current affairs oriented, the prelims paper. But now they are not asking so much current affairs. Even if they are, right? You look at the prelims paper every time, modern history, economy, polity, environment basics. 60 questions come from here. 60% paper irrespective of what will come, right? And UPSC does this game that they will trouble you every year with something or the other. At one point of time, it used to be wildlife parks, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, animals, species. Then it became Buddhism, Jainism, too much in depth. In 2020, it was agriculture. Okay, the time I gave the exam, it was sports question and some peculiar questions from art and culture. This time it was IR, right? They will always do this. And they will always try to make you fear in that they are going to test your mettle. But when you look back at the paper, the cutoff would be 80% of the number of marks that are being asked from polity, modern history, economy, and environment basics. So if you don't do these portions well, then you're absolutely going to suffer in the prelims exam, no matter what current affairs and whatever you know. But if these portions are done well, then you'll sail through prelims quite comfortably, right?
Let me add to my previous question.
Yes.
According to you, what is the easiest and what is the toughest part of the exam?
I don't think there's any easy part, to be very honest.
Relatively.
Relatively, I think for me it was the essay paper, because I used to enjoy writing essays because you don't have to study any content for essay as such. It is all from your GS knowledge itself. So for me, that was relatively easy. The toughest part in this exam is the inertia factor. And you will have inertia everywhere, and I'll tell you how. First, you will have inertia about newspapers. Should you read it or not? Should you watch DNS, Focus, this, that, all of that. Then you'll have inertia on NCRTs, old or new, if new, which one, old, which one. Then you will have inertia on answer writing, when to start, what to write, which questions to see, which test series to follow. The thing is, if you get over the inertia aspect, this exam starts getting a little easier. But a lot of people are not able to cross that barrier. So I think that inertia barrier in this exam is the toughest part. Once you start crossing that, you'll have an inertia in test series also, prelims also. So once you cross that, this exam will get easier. So that is the toughest part in my opinion.
Yes, any questions?
What was your revising pattern actually?
See, I think why I'm not telling this to you personally, but this is not a good question because your revision depends on how you study. So the way you study and the way I study is very different. So our revisions will also be very different. For example, I used to remember polity and modern history really well, but I never used to remember geography well. So I revised geography more than I revised modern history and polity. One thing I used to do was, for example, if I am revising polity, let's say for us, polity, modern history went together, then geography and ancient India started. So when geography, ancient India started, I used to revise polity and modern history. So when I completed one revision of that, after, let's say today I am completing my polity revision, 1 week I am not going to give any test. After 1 week, I'm going to give test of polity, because if I have completed my revision today, tomorrow I give a test, I'll naturally remember everything. So after 1 week, I'd give sectional test. The beauty of sectional test is that they will go very depth into the topic. Very small things they'll pick up, which are probably not that important for UPSC actual exam, but then you'll know where your revision is lacking on those topics. And then there also you have to be smart enough to realize, let's say if they're asking on citizenship, then they are going very much into the depths of what date, which person exactly, nationality, etc. You don't have to focus too much on that. But that is how I used to do my revision. If I completed today, 1 week later I would give sectional test to realize how much I remembered. Then the questions I did wrong, or the things I used to forget, I used to go back and see what I used to do wrong in those questions. For example, in tribunal chapter, I always did questions wrong. I don't know why. One of the easiest chapters, I always did questions wrong. So I revised that chapter end to end. So that is an analysis that you do yourself. So I think your revision depends on how you study. So just make a plan for revision. However you revise, that is up to you. Some people make it 1 hour every day. Some people make it weekly, monthly. Don't make it yearly. Just keep it regular. Just keep it regular, but keep revising. However you feel comfortable. Yeah.
How important is writing fast in this examination?
I think it is relevant, but that doesn't mean that if you are a slow writer, you can't write in this exam. Right? I know a lot of people who write very slow. For example, myself, this bone of mine is broken, right? From here, exactly here. So there's a sound also sometimes. So the very first day when I wrote my GS 1-2 paper, when I came back home, it was swollen this much. And I had to write the ethics paper the next day after GS3, right? So it is not that if you're writing slow or if you have some trouble with writing, you're not going to be able to complete the paper. But that will come by practice. So what I did in December was 2 sets of mock tests, essay, then I used to give completely in UPSC pattern. So essay, next day GS1, GS2, then GS3, GS4, 9 to 12, 3 to 5. Exactly the way UPSC asks. And that I did it twice before my actual mains examination. So that will come by practice. Even if you're a slow writer, you just have to figure out how to write 250 words at max in that space for any topic. You don't have to write very verbose. So even if you write slow, UPSC has given you the leeway कि 250 words से ज़्यादा नहीं लिखना है. So write 250 words max. In fact, a lot of answers I've written less than the word limit. And this is not a boards exam, right? Not college exam, where if you fill the pages, they are going to give you marks. They're going to strike off your paper and throw it away, right? Realize 13,000 people, for every person, 7 papers. How much they have to correct, right? And in that, if you're writing irrelevant stuff, they're going to give you really bad marks. So just write what is important, and in that time limit, in those word limit, that is more important rather than thinking that I'm writing slow or fast. Just develop that habit of completing the paper irrespective of what your writing speed is, and with practice it improves. Answer writing is a thing of labor, right? So if you start running today, 1 month later you will be running faster. So it's the same in answer writing as well, is that you have to sit and run, right?
Did you complete all the answers in the papers?
Yes, very important. I think I'll tell you with ethics paper, so I had a very big problem with the ethics paper. I was not able to complete it on time because it's a very lengthy paper, right? And an ethics paper, I gave 12 or 13 full length mocks before I went to the mains examination, and I was still only able to complete the paper in 2 hours 55 minutes. So I had a huge issue. And even in my actual mains exam, in my first 45 minutes, I wrote only first 2 case studies, and that too second case study conclusion I had not written. So I panicked really hard in the exam. Then what I did after that, I just closed my mind. Whatever came to me, I just wrote. And I have written the worst ethics paper of my life in the UPSC exam. And I was very afraid about it because in ethics, the range of marks is very high, right? So I was very afraid about it. In the end, I scored 105 marks. And that is down to the fact that I completed the paper. I wrote what they asked. So in some questions, they say specifically illustrate with examples. So I'm not giving them theory. I'm just explaining the theory in 3-4 lines. I'm giving 3 or 4 examples. Even if I'm not able to fill 2 sides of the pages, right? I'm just giving them what they have asked. And in a lot of questions, I didn't have conclusion, I didn't have intro somewhere, but I just finished my paper somehow. I have scored 105. So it's very important that you finish the paper, because if you're leaving, let's say, one question every GS paper, right? Cumulatively, you're leaving at least 50 marks. So your entire score that is coming out of 750, it is not out of 1750 anymore. It is out of 1700 now. As it is, UPSC does not give a lot of marks. So you will go down the pack. So it is very important to complete the paper on time. And the questions which you don't know the answers to, do it at the end, because you will already be in a rush. So it's not that you will write you're already going to write a bad answer on that. You will just write a little more worse. And answer writing, I want to say something, that nobody is writing perfect answers in the exam. All right. It is a huge myth. And I'll tell you, 5 to 6 answers you write really well, which you're expecting. For example, Bhakti literature, or in economy, I was expecting V-shaped recovery. These questions you're expecting, you write well on these. 10, 11 questions, because you have to think on the spot, you write average answers, substandard answers. 2-3 questions, हर कोई भद्दे लिख के आते हैं, ठीक है? And if UPSC makes public our, answer sheets, we won't be able to sit here and show our faces. That is, and I'm telling this to you in full honesty, because you cannot write 20 good answers in the exam. In that limited amount of time, your pen and your mind won't work together in the exam, right? So it's not humanly possible. So and even in the mock tests, the mock answers that come, they are perfect answers. You have to analyze whether you met the demand of the question based on the answer. If you have, then how relevantly have you? For example, if you have written 7 points, have you written 4 to 5 relevant points? And then from that answer, you pick up, okay, some data you find very good that can be used, or some committee. And not in every question you have to use data diagram. I have not drawn single diagram in GS1 paper. I have used only data which was required in GS2 paper, and I've scored 114 in GS2, I've scored 98 in GS1. These are good marks. So that means UPSC is looking for relevancy. I'm not looking for very fancy stuff, right? So just do what is humanly possible, not machines, and we don't have to be as well, right?
Any questions? See, when student exactly start the test series, means after the completion of particular topic, or once they complete whole coaching, what is the best way?
No, I think not after whole coaching, because that is a long time. But for example, in our case, polity and modern history, that was completed in 1 month, right? So you do a revision, and then you give a few tests. And in polity and modern history, the advantage is the topics are kind of static. Polity, there are a few current affairs oriented questions, but you try to answer the static parts in answer writing, and in prelims you can do the sectional test, right? And then you will do your better revision next time around. So you have to do topic wise. I used to do this way, that once when entire block was completed, I would revise it and then try to solve test on that, because then I would know in my next revision what I have to do better, what I already knew better. So that sort of analysis I used to do after my first set of tests. So that is why in Rouse also they'll give you, for prelims they'll give you 50 tests, out of which first 30 are only sectional tests. So that is the importance of sectional tests. For every topic you will have 2-3 sectional tests. Those 2-3 sectional tests means 2-3 revisions for you. And that will only happen when you revise once, give the first test, then later when you revise, give the second test, and that second revision is based on your first test topics, what you did well, what you did not do well, and then the third. So in this exam, you first read, then you revise, then you test, then you read again. If you complete this cycle 3 to 4 times, that is the, I think, epitome of preparation in this exam. You don't need to do anything else, in my opinion. That is what I did. And 1.5 years, usse zyada kitna hi kar loge yaar. So that is more than enough.
See, simply,
yeah.
So did you make notes for revision, or you just rely on class notes?
Depend on topic to topic. For example,
economics.
Yeah, so economy, class notes are already there. Then current affairs is well maintained in your focus. So I didn't have to go anything above and beyond that. But for art and culture, for ancient medieval, these are very, data-headed topics. So here I made my 20-25 page notes that idhar se kuch bhi aayega, I'll do in the exam. Idhar se kuch bhi bahar aaya, I don't care, right? Because for that I studied, for example, as ma'am told us, ancient history of R.S. Sharma, that one NCERT and class notes. I combined that into those 20-25 sheets. I used to revise that every time I got the opportunity. But in modern history, for example, it's a huge syllabus, right? So for certain topics, I used to make notes. For example, social-religious reform movements was there. Then some personalities were there, important ones, which I had to make notes on. But I would not make notes on, let's say, Quit India movement or NCM or CDM, because I knew the events in my head. I knew what happened, who were the personalities, what exactly agreements were signed, those kind of things. So I didn't make notes for that, but I made notes for these data and information heavy topics, right? So that is how I made notes. Again, completely depends on how you study, how you revise.
And so for polity?
For polity, Lakshmikant, there's a lot of space in Lakshmikant to make notes. And then you have your class notes. So in polity, for example, you will see in president or governor, all these chapters, who gives them the oath, right? Who they resign to. So there is always a blank page. I used to write there itself, and then I never used to revise the entire thing. One day before the exam, just saw that and went to the end. The rest of it, see, there's also muscle memory. Your brain is also muscle. So the more number of times you revise, right, it is not a day before the exam you'll feel like you know nothing. But when you'll give the exam, your brain will be switched on. And at that point of time, you'll start recollecting things that you would never have thought that you'd do in your entire life, right? So that kind of thing will happen. So that is why you revise more. Just make notes which you think you can revise before the exam. And that will happen after 3-4 reading. Don't make notes very initially. Make it after 3-4 revisions. Then you will have the perfect amount of notes that you need to study before the exam. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask, what is the relevance of diagram drawing in main study? Does it work?
It depends. It depends. For example, in geography, yes, you do practice it. It's not that I didn't draw diagrams. Doesn't mean that I didn't practice them. I didn't find questions relevant enough to make the diagrams, right? So you practice your diagrams, especially in geography, in IR, in certain topics you do practice them. In economy, if you can make a few, those kind of circular diagrams, mind maps, those kind of things. If you've seen somewhere in economic survey, those kind of things help, but only if it is relevant to the exam. For example, this time in geography, there was this question, the development of IT industry has happened in cities. So illustrate more on the socio-economic factors regarding that. Now in there, if you're drawing a diagram and you're showing the IT industries in Bangalore, Chennai, Pune, there he's not asking that. He doesn't want to know that. You just tell him the social issues, the economic issues. If you write more points there, you will get more marks there. So if you have to make relevant diagrams. There was this another question in geography where they had asked us about mountain ranges in the entire world and uska kya climatic impact in the region. So there is one aspect that you can make a diagram. These are the mountain ranges here. But I thought in the exam that if I mention the mountain ranges and I mention more about the climatic influence, that would give me more marks. So that is what I did. So it depends. I didn't find the questions relevant enough to make answers. For example, in the Bhakti literature movement, some people have drawn the map of India and the examples of important personalities related to Bhakti movement from different parts of. That is also a good approach, but I didn't find it relevant. So I focus more on how it helps grow the vernacular languages, right? So it doesn't mean you don't practice. You practice and go only if you find relevant. For example, in a cropping question, it is very important to make a diagram. Tell them this is where in India we are growing these crops, tea, coffee, jute, whatever, right? So that sort of analysis you have to do beforehand. And then only draw if it is relevant. Zabardasti bana ke diagrams and marks nahi milne wale. Yeah.
Okay, I have a bigger question for you. You have been one of our first online batch students. You would have been skeptical when you joined the online batch. You would have had many apprehensions. In what way did our whole team meet your expectations? In what ways we surpassed it? And if there is any feedback that you can give us so that we can make some course corrections. Yes.
I think initially when we started the batches, we had a lot of issues also. I think you might remember there were audio issues and there were video issues, there were net issues. So first 3-4 classes were very challenging. And at that point of time, I was thinking ki bhai 8 mahine to nahi ho payega aise, right? So, but we also didn't have a lot of options out there. So, but the way the management picked it up, right? So they solved every issue that we had. And initially we also had the problem of asking doubts. Abhi to we can ask doubts. For example, he's writing something, you can stop him, ask him a doubt. We could not do that very easily in the online mode. So we used to chat in the Zoom, and again, it's very difficult for teachers to read everything. So a lot of questions would be missed. So then there was a way out where first 15 minutes and last 15 minutes were reserved for doubts of previous classes and this class, right? So in every way, whatever challenge we had, I think the team took it up really well. And by the end of it, when I was finishing my QIP mains, I think the way everything was being taught to us, it was so seamless. It was as if, you know, it didn't have a lot of issues with anything. And by the end of it, I was also watching more of recorded videos rather than live classes to save time. And I used to watch them at 2x and high speeds to save time. So these are also, you know, very positive things that I found out from these classes. And also, for example, if there's a topic I don't understand well, recorded classes there, I could go back and read them. I didn't do that very often, but I always had that opportunity, and I did do that for a few topics. So otherwise, I think the feedback for me, it was very positive. Even outside, I told them that the biggest thing is you don't have to come to, if you're not living in Delhi, you don't have to come to Delhi and struggle here. You can study at the comfort of your home, and studying is more important than anything else. So if you can do that in online or offline, I think offline is a different vibe. But it's not that online is not working well. I think at least here at Rahul, it worked really well for me. And I did everything online only. So even answer writing, getting my copies corrected, everything was online. So even when my answers used to be corrected, I used to get a call from the answer writing team that this is what you can work on, these kind of things. So they made it very, you know, in such a way, and people were very approachable. I used to text Reddy sir quite a lot. So I think he might have been worried about me at some point in time, because I used to text him a lot of doubts I used to ask him. So he, and even like, for example, Vaibhav sir was my mentor. So I used to text him a lot also. So that kind of approach and help was always there for us. So I don't really think I missed offline classes that much. It was just that the vibe you have with your teachers, that you can't get on online. That is the only negative thing. Otherwise, everything was perfectly fine by the time I, you know, finished my course here at Rouse. Yeah.
You have gone through a multitude of trials and errors in the past 2 years regarding the preparation. Yeah. What is your advice to them?
How to get motivated. Generally, students
How to
lose
stay on
motivation.
track, how to keep up the motivation.
I think motivation comes internally.
What
right?
to do to begin with? Do they blindly trust the teachers? Do they blindly trust the institutions? Or do they trust their instincts? Or do they trust the advice that is available in the market?
I think, see, you're here for a reason. So you've paid them the fees to listen to them, right? So obviously your instincts come first, but whatever is being told to you is more important, because they have been in this entire UPSC game for a very long time. They've given interviews themselves. They've now seen a lot of students coming through, right? So it is important that you realize what they are saying and the importance of it, and then you apply it based on your understanding, right? And in your context, you can't blindly follow anyone. You have to have your own strategies. As far as motivation is concerned, I think it should be internal, because you will have a lot of highs and lows in the preparation, and when you will have the lows, you'll be at rock bottom, right? See, if you are in a very good day, when you are in a positive mood, you can study endlessly, right? That is not when you are beating the competition. You're beating the competition on the days when you don't feel like studying, but you are still putting 4 hours. It's less than what you would study on an average day, but you're still pushing yourself ki, chalo kuch to dekh lete hain. Let's just study something which might be relevant for the exam. Let's just watch a video at somewhere which might come in handy. Let's just do mapping. These are the days when you may create the difference with your competition, right? The real competition in this examination, and even in IIT, when I gave that exam, IIT I failed once and then I qualified second time. So I know the difference in the competition, right? In this exam, the real competition is not more than 35,000. I can give that to you in writing. You have to defeat only them. And then you have to defeat what they are doing. So your success is not going to come from the fact that you are studying Spectrum and somebody else is studying Bipin Chandra, right? Your success is going to come from, if you are studying 2 times Spectrum, I'll study 4 times. This is where the difference will be created. So that internal motivation you need to have, that why you, for example, for me, I was very motivated. I left a very good job. I left a very stable, settled life, right? And I told myself I'll give only 2 attempts. 2 attempts also means 3 years. Right now I'm sitting here and saying first attempt, but that also means 2 years of my life. It's June 2022 now. June 2020 was when I started, right? So I told myself 2 attempts. I've left a very stable job, a very stable career. So I need to give everything that I have to, at least in my powers, whatever I can do to qualify this exam. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, all well and good. Probably the commission might find 700, 800 better people than me. That's fine. That is not a problem for me. But I'll put my blood and sweat into it. And then we'll see what happens, right? So that is the kind of approach I had for the exam. And as Sir said, I did a lot of, to this exam. I'll tell you, give every subject the importance it deserves. right? So if internal security comes for 25 marks in mains, doesn't mean you read a book by an IPS officer which is 250 pages long. And you realize the topics that money laundering, Naxalism and its link with development, same topics they will ask again and again. Because, for example, disaster management. If an earthquake comes today, you will again write the same things that probably my father would have written 30 years ago, right? Nothing has changed. You know, same points you will write: early warning system, local capacity building, this, that, everything. Nobody is doing it, but you will write. You know, so give every topic the importance it deserves, right? And if you know, for example, GS1, all papers except society are very static in nature. Modern history, then you have art and culture. And again, study the syllabus well, because people ask me about how you studied ancient and medieval for mains. It is not in the syllabus. Why will I study? Right? In syllabus only 1750 onwards. Art and culture is there. So these are very static. Geography, post-independence, again, post-independence India, world history. These are topics, hardly they ask any questions. So study only the important topics from here. World history, study World War I, World War II, the rise of dictators, Cold War, only the important things. If anything question comes from here, write what you know. Otherwise, leave it, because nobody is going to do a PhD in world history and come to answer a 10 marker, right? Again, for post-independent India, I think first time question was asked after years. And that too, such a simple question was asked. It wasn't a very difficult question. That question you could have answered from your understanding of modern history, economy, polity, right? So study the topics which are going to be asked more. In GS1 paper, geography is going to be asked for 80 to 100 marks every year. Why? Because in prelims they are asking less. You'll always see, because in prelims they are asking environment more. And they are asking environment geography more, because forest services is combined now. So geography basics are less here. So they'll ask more geography in GS1 paper. And 80 to 100 marks will come from there. So study geography more for mains and less for prelims. So this sort of analysis, when you do yourself, give every paper the respect it deserves and the number of marks you can score from it. Only then when you will clear this exam. For example, I knew at 1000 marks I'll get my first preference. And in PT, that is interview, 170 marks is the average across all boards. So you need to score 830 marks. For me, that was my target. In mains written, I scored 832 marks. There also I had mini targets. Like in essay, I want to score 130 plus. In ethics, I want to score 110 plus. I ended up with 135 in essay, 105 in ethics. So again, 240 plus, which I had targeted. In GS 1, 2, 3 paper, if you realize, all toppers you take, only except a few here and there. I don't know what they write, but it is always 300 plus minus 5. So you're not creating a difference there. Difference is from essay, ethics and option. So I knew I have to score well in these papers, so I studied them more, right, for my mains examination. When you're clearing prelims, you know polity, modern history, geography, these topics you already know well enough. It's just that how you write answers from them. And that is why people score exact marks here. Because same questions, they have studied the same content and they'll write almost the same answers. So they are scoring almost the same. All the toppers. 300 plus minus 5 in GS 1, 2, 3. The difference is in ethics, essay and option. That is how I approach the exam, very objectively. Mains is a subjective exam, I approached it objectively. And that is exactly what I scored. In interview, I scored 20-25 marks more. So my rank shot up, right? So that is my only advice. Be objective, give every subject the respect it deserves. And I think whatever is in your powers, do that to clear the exam. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, you will anyway turn out to be a better person than how you entered the exam. At least that is how I approached the exam. That was my entire approach. Please.
So regarding your mathematics optional, do you join or follow any online course or just do the self-study with some standards?
For mathematics, for mathematics, IMS notes were my base, right? Then there is a channel on YouTube called Mathocrat. So the most difficult portions of mathematics syllabus, for example, the physics topics, real analysis, modern algebra, he has covered really well on his channel, and he himself has scored 300 plus earlier in maths. It is completely free. So I watched his videos, I made notes out of that. Then IMS notes, they were my base. I didn't study very big books because I didn't have the time. And then I studied I solved PYQs once and then I revised it twice before the exam. The important questions, whatever I thought was important, which I would forget, which I need to see before the exam. So I have legit revised PYQs in all stages. Prelims, mains, and even interview. I have revised transcripts of people who belong to my background. So if I used to find someone from electrical engineering or someone from IIT or engineering, or there was one candidate who was from Cisco Systems, the place I was working at, or if I used to find some software developer, I used to see what questions they are asked from these topics, and I revised them well. And I only had 14 days for my PT, right? So that is how PYQs base, IMS notes, and Mathocrat channel on YouTube. That was enough for maths.
Try to give more what you try to give me your answer presentation. Like you wanted to show that you know more content.
No, never. You will never impress the examiner with your content. Let me tell you this, okay? So you only be able to score well if you are writing what is being asked. So I never used to show off that, okay, I know this much. Even if I would know a certain data or scheme, I would not put it in the answer if it was not relevant, right? Because it irritates the examiner. You will yourself, when you start reading a lot of answers, you'll start getting irritated. Why kyun likh raha hai? This is not asked, right? So the first thing I used to do, I used to break the questions. In a lot of questions, you will see UPSC first gives 2-3 lines in quotes, and then they ask something. People only write what is being asked after the quote. I also used to mention something about the quote, what they are asking. So I used to break everything in the question, right? So for example, I said socio-economic, they are asking issues. There are 2 ways to doing this. First, you write socio-economic and then you write 6-7 points. I used to do it differently. I used to do social issues, economic issues separately. And I used to write 4 points. The reason is, if you write 6-7 points under one heading, you leave the scope of scoring 2.5 marks, right? But if you are dividing it into 2, and you write only 4 points everywhere, you will get 1 marks easily. It can become 1.5. So you'll get 3, right? So I used to try to snatch marks anywhere. Just try to snatch whatever they are asking. So even if they are writing a quote, so in that quote I used to tell them, okay, this is what you have asked, and okay, 2-3 points there. Okay, what you're saying is true. Then I would answer the rest of the part. So I used to never leave the quote also, that what they're asking. And in the question, exact statement which they used to put, I used to make as my heading, so that the examiner does not have to search what is being asked and what I'm writing. If they are asking impact of, let's say, any XYZ thing, or watershed movement, so I used to write watershed movement, 1 to 3 points. Again, a little bit of intelligence. For example, let's say they're asking Gandhiji's entry into the national movement was a watershed movement for Indian freedom struggle, right? What a lot of people will do, Gandhiji came January 1915, this changes after Gandhiji's entry. They'll write everything, non-violence, women, middle class movement, everything they'll write. What I will do, I'll write the same introduction. I'll first mention the national movement before Gandhiji, right? There I'll give, he has not asked explicitly, but I'll give them 3 points that, let's say they were very violent, they wanted to scare away the Britishers, quixotic heroism, that is a key term. I would give these 3, that he has not asked. Then in my next part, I would write watershed moment due to arrival of Gandhiji. There I will write 5-6 points. So he can instantly connect, okay, non-violence after violence. There was no women participation, now that was there. What was the issues in Swadeshi movement? There I'd write 1 point. Here I'll show them Hindu-Muslim unity in non-cooperation movement. I'll show them the change, because he is asking the change, right? So these sort of things I used to do so that I can get more marks from what is being asked. So you have to break your question into multiple parts, and then you'll be able to write a good answer. For example, this time in terrorism, they had asked 5-6 portions, solutions, challenges, I don't know what all. So I wrote every part that they asked, different heading, 3 points everywhere, so that I can snatch more marks from the examiner. Oh, he has to give me half marks everywhere, irrespective of, because I'm writing something relevant itself, right? So the more number of portions you divide your answers in, you will get more marks. So this comes with answer writing practice mostly, and never try to show off your content. It's not going to help in the exam, right?
In mains examination, content is not much relevant. The relevance, you have to decode the given question in multiple dimensions. You have to mention, not like that we learned something, we know some facts or figures, we keep deliberately. If there is economical dimension, keep economical dimension, political dimension, social dimension, cultural dimension, technological dimension. Depending on the demand of the examiner, we have to write.
Again, one example I'll give. For example, everybody was expecting a question on COP26 this year. Okay, so everybody was prepared. So I'll give you how from the same content I'll write 2 different answers. First, if they ask that India's position in the COP26 was not very satisfactory, mention the issues with India's position at COP26 or the limitations. So I'll write India didn't join the methane pledge. India didn't join the deforestation pledge. India put coal from phase out to phase down. Okay. Now let's say they are asking the same question, that India showed climate leadership in COP26. Same points, and I'll write India didn't join the methane pledge because we have a very significant agricultural economy. We have to save our farmers. Second, India didn't join the deforestation pledge because already we are doing better in our forest recovery in the last ISFR data I'll give. And then I'll tell them India has done well in its Paris targets, NDCs. Third point, that India did phase out to phase down because India is still a developing economy and the per capita emissions is less. So that is why it is important to protect our economy. Same points, but how you change it in the context of the question, that is very important. So the importance in answer writing is how you mold your content based on what is being asked, rather than otherwise they're going to ask new questions every year. How will you cover all of these aspects? It is not going to be in one book or probably in 10 different books. So you're not going to start studying all of them at once, right? It's just how you prepare a topic and then the analysis which is asked, how you write from the knowledge you already know. That is very important. And you were asking something, I broke you in between.
Can you give us a mic?
Yeah, it's all right. Like an academic writing.
Yeah, it's paragraph.
Paragraph.
Yeah.
So what did you follow that or did you change it? Something like most of the software learned that they write in points.
Yeah.
So what is more than
I think you should write in points. I mean, that is my personal opinion. The reason is, if you're writing paragraphs, it's all right. You can write your paper in paragraphs, and if you're able to complete it, well and good. It's not that UPSC is not going to award you marks. It's just that when you write in points, right, it is very clearly visible that you're writing 5 points on a certain topic. In paragraph, it might not be that visible, right? So even if he wants to award you, let's say, half a mark for every point that you're writing, so it gets 2.5 here. Probably in paragraph format, it might be 1.5 or 2. So that is the only difference. It's not that UPSC will make any distinction between paragraph writing or point-wise writing. It's not that case. It's just that you can write faster, you will write relevant points, you will write less words. In paragraphs, we have a tendency of getting very verbose. That you will avoid when you're writing in points. And writing in points, your answers are very clearly visible, that in every aspect, how many points you've written. So it's easier to mark that way because, see, they are not reading everything that you've written. It's not possible. I don't think they're doing it. They're just, whatever parts you have underlined or marked, they're just sniffing through it. And then when they see, okay, relevant here, relevant there, they'll have an overall idea, okay, overall answer was relevant, 2, 2.5, 3. And then when they say, okay, 7 points, 2.5, 4 points, 2, like that. So that kind of observation comes very easy in point format. So again, whatever you are comfortable with, but the more answer writing you do, I think you will automatically shift to point format. That is my opinion. That will happen naturally because you won't be able to complete the paper on time. Right?
Did you set any targets for full length test? Like I'll solve this number of targets.
No, never. I've never made this target that I'll solve X amount of tests. My only target was I'll write tests the day I start getting comfortable that, okay, in answer writing, I am able to finish the test, the entire answers. So 20 days before mains examination, I wrote nothing. No answers, because I gained that confidence by doing that UPSC simulation 2 times that I will finish my papers. So I didn't write any more tests after that, right? In prelims, again, I started gaining that confidence when I was scoring 85 to 100 wala range. And there I used to realize, okay, I'm getting questions from economy, polity, modern history correct. When I start gaining that confidence, I stop my prelims test series as well. So it depends on your own confidence. I never had a target that X amount of tests I'll give, or after this only I'll gain. If it comes natural to you, it might be lesser number of tests for you and probably more number of tests for someone else. It is just that when you get to that preparation level where you're comfortable with the way UPSC is conducting this exam, that should be the limit for your test. And not that you decide, okay, I'll give this many tests now, this many tests then. I don't think that is the right way of approaching tests. Yeah.
What was your approach in ethics paper?
I think ethics was one of the papers in which I was most disoriented. So at the end, what I did was I just studied the Compass magazine, Rao's IAS Compass, the ethics that it comes. It was, I think, 140, 150 page, and I mugged it up, right? Then I made a document where I made definitions of my own. For example, what is transparency for me? Not what is written in the dictionary. What I meant with what transparency meant for me, and then relevant examples on that, right? So I made that document. So I had a document of definitions, examples, and then the Rouse Focus magazine. I mugged it up, and as I said, I gave 12 to 13 mock tests, full length ethics test before my mains examination. From there, I analyzed where I'm getting stuck. If, for example, initially in attitude questions, I knew only very limited content, and then I got stuck in some paper. Then I would go and study more in depth about attitude, ABC model, etc., etc. So that way I did. My ethics preparation was based on the test and then my analysis of it, rather than first studying and then giving the test. So you can see, you will be taught in the class, right? And then you can analyze yourself that, because I didn't find any good book for ethics in the market. So at the end, I decided I'll stick with Compass, whatever is written. There were a few diagrams, few definitions, examples. I just picked everything from there and I made a few of my own, and I went in the exam with that. And my only goal in the ethics paper was to complete the paper, right? And try to ask what is being asked, so try to write what is being asked and not write what I know, right? And in ethics paper, I think, again, answer writing in ethics is a little different, right? When you analyze the PYQs, for example, in case studies, you will see every 2 or 3 years, they will repeat certain case studies. For example, on disaster management, on corruption, right? Then there will be something on that work culture. These type of case studies will repeat. Sometimes you will be DM, sometimes you will be SP, sometimes you will be CM, sometimes you will be someone else, right? For these type of standard case studies which I identified, I made my introduction and conclusion ready, right? So that my middle of the body would only be based on what the case is asking, but upar niche ka mera set rahega, the sandwich I'll make, right? So this, my approach with ethics was very practical. It was not theoretical. And in ethics, a lot of people are mugging up a lot of philosophers, their names, quotes, everything. I put it to a minimum, and I scored 105, which means, again, ethics, I also use very practical examples. For example, if you write for accountability or responsibility, you can write, let's say, you observe probably some teacher comes 10 minutes late to class. You can write that example. Or you can see on road, some people in a luxury vehicles, they'll throw chips packets outside their cars. So what are the ethical issues here? Where you can use this as an example. Practical examples as well. Not only examples of IAS officers or Gandhiji or APJ Abdul Kalam, but these examples as well. Because your paper should not look very, trained. It should not be ki, okay, you have been fed this, you've just replicated it. Your ethical nature should also come out in the paper somewhere. That what ethics means for you, what are the ethical issues that you're noticing every day. So these type of things, and use current affairs examples as well. For example, marital rape, right? Or increasing the marriageable age of women to 21. What are the ethical issues here? So if you find some and you can use it somewhere, try to use these kind of examples as well. For example, in BPSC exam, the paper got leaked. It is the biggest exam of the state and the paper is leaked, right? So how come that happens? So what are the ethical issues there? So when you start your mains preparation, when you're studying for mains, especially ethics is only mains oriented. So there you will start identifying where you can fit these examples, right? So my approach was very practical and not very theoretical, that I'll read some book and notes and then I'll start answering. I did answering, then I read my notes, then I made further notes of how to make my ethics answers better. That way I prepared, right?
I hope almost all got the clarity. Huh?
Yes.
Enjoyed the session?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
And Subhankar, thank you for coming here,
Thank you, sir.
sharing your experience. It is more valuable to them as well as the teaching fraternity
Hope so.
and the institution. Yeah, time well spent, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you
So much.